This is Michael Loveman, and you are now witnessing another episode of Legal Knowledge. This is episode 6, season 6, episode 2. It is the primary election special. We have a few guests here tonight. We were hoping to have some other people. John Cromco did not show up. But we do have, if we could go ahead and do Cam 2, we do have Steve Kozaczyk. There, I said it right, finally. And Daniel Patterson. So, these are the current panelists. So, I wanted to let everyone know that in terms of the show, there will be every third Friday, there is a live show. This is one of them if you're watching live on Friday. If you're watching on Thursday morning at 7 a.m., this is a rerun. All right, so we have those then. I wanted to also talk about some genetically modified oranges, which is kind of strange that it's come to my attention that they're if we can go to the map, can we go to the map? There has been a creep since in China in the 1800s. There has been this greening disease, I guess, and it now has come to since 2005, and then in California in 2012, it has now come to our shores. And so what we do as a result is we go right to, hey, let's genetically modify oranges to make sure that yes, this is the IKTV GMO update, yes. To make sure that we can still have oranges. Now, I'm thinking that maybe I'd rather have just apple juice or grapefruit juice, or do I need orange? All right. Anyway, it's a question of what's the trade-off. Notice that there are a good number of spots in Europe where we can still not use genetically modified trees to keep having oranges. And it's put to us in this way that it's either oranges or no oranges, and then you have nothing. But I think that what it really is let's not use as many pesticides, and I think there's a saner way of going about it. So that's the Legal Knowledge Television GMO update. And okay, so let's get on with the show. I'm sorry to rant about that. Again, our panel tonight, we are doing a primary election special. Our panel tonight is Steve and Daniel. There's no John Cromco. Sorry about the website. Steve, the one-term not Congress, but council person from, you used to be a Republican and now you're a Democrat, and it was January when you switched because of the guns.
Well, not exclusively. That was kind of the tipping point. I ran as a Republican in 2009. At the time, running as a centrist, the Republican Party thought that was going to be a real good thing because you get the crossover vote and all that. They loved it during the campaign, but when centrist and left-leaning politics turned into policy, they didn't like it so much anymore. My position was it was truth in advertising. You kind of got what you wanted, and it got into a little bit of a food fight, and the gun thing was the tipping point for it.
Yeah. All right. So, Daniel, would you like to? I was giving him an introduction.
I could just share, my experience in politics is it's tough to have an independent mindset. I do think we need as much independent viewpoints as we can get in the city of Tucson, and make sure you vote. It's important. A lot of us hear a lot of complaints. Now's the time to vote. Election season's coming up, so pay attention.
The last day to register for the general election, for the primary, as was on in the intro, if you're registering for the primary, it's too late now.
Yeah, it's a week out.
Yeah,
It's the
but
27th.
if you're, do you have until the 7th of October?
Right,
I
you
believe?
can still register for the general.
Until the-
and
yeah, for the
and Daniel's
general,
absolutely
yeah,
right. If
yeah.
you want a seat at the table, you got to make sure you pull your chair up and get there, and that's just registering to vote.
Yeah. And then we're doing the mail-in, and
Right.
and on the website I also have like the links for all of the city council, the city the clerks, the election website. They
Right, you
have.
can register online. You can contact the county recorder's office, and they'll register you also.
It's the county recorder isn't the one who's holding this election. This is the city.
Well, they'll manage the election. It's a city election, but we
I
contract
ran
with
into
them.
that problem. I went into the recorder's office in the Pink Dome building, and they told me to go down to the city.
Well, you can register to vote with the county.
No, I was looking for my mail-in ballot.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yep, they were right.
Yeah. All right, so I went to a city council meeting via. Is it the first Tuesday of every month?
No, we hold them on Tuesdays. This fall, we're going to go to every other Tuesday, and so it varies month to month, depending on how many Tuesdays
So
there are.
when's the next one? Because that was
September 10th.
Is it the 10th? Okay, so it's not the first. It'll be the second this coming month.
It'll be the
It was
second.
the first last month, though.
Right, it'll be the second this time because the first is the first one right after the primary, and all that will happen on that Tuesday was that they'll validate the primary election.
So I went there and noticed that you guys, a really great thing that you did, the $70 million of the access to care.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, we're
and,
trying to plug a hole.
I think there are people that may say, "Oh my God, where'd you get the money? Is that our money? Is that taxpayers' money? Where'd that money come from?"
The hospitals have a huge problem with uncompensated care.
Right.
People who are without health coverage are using emergency rooms as their primary care physicians. The hospitals pay those bills. We have lost just in the last year alone in the city of Tucson, in the 6 health companies, health groups that were a part of this access to care that we just adopted, we lost over $135 million. So the hospitals came to us and said, we would like you, City of Tucson, to assess us a fee, and we'll then pay it to you. We'll funnel that money up to the state legislature because that's where we have to go in order to get the 2-to-1 federal match. It'll get about $80 million back into this community, which will go back to the hospitals to help them cover that uncompensated care. It's a huge deal, and so actually it is not taxpayer money. It's money that the hospitals are paying to us in order to generate a 2-to-1 federal match.
Now here's another thing where I think people may get confused. That's also not the same money that Jan Brewer was insisting on getting to the state.
No, it's absolutely
Right.
different
There's
money.
a whole separate pot.
Absolutely.
So
The
this is
reason
extra money.
Right. The reason we're
Right.
doing it is to plug the hole that that happened because the legislature
Yeah,
couldn't.
I know,
get the-
because they kicked everybody off. Yeah, I know. Should we say Shirley Scott's the new vice mayor?
You can if you want.
Yay!
It's
Should we
totally
do that?
totally
Yeah, I know, it's like one of
inconsequential.
those things that happen.
It's rotation.
It was funny.
means
How
absolutely
often
nothing.
does that happen?
Every-
And what's the
twice a year.
significance of vice mayor?
Virtually nothing. It happens twice a year. It's totally by rotation. It's the next person in line. They fill in when the mayor's gone. That's it.
All right. Okay, so you voted against, again, we're going with the last city council meeting, you voted against renewing the Tucson Downtown Partnership, or Downtown Tucson, I can't remember how it's called. Yes.
The Downtown Tucson Partnership, I voted against it because I didn't think we were giving them enough money.
Right, so why vote against it?
Because I thought that we should be giving them more cash.
So
The Downtown Tucson Partnership is our advocate in the downtown core for clean, safe, and well lit, but most importantly, they're the ones who are out on the street who touch the local businesses in the downtown core.
Was it Karen who said it can't be all things to all people?
Well, it can, and we're not asking them to, and my position was that we're not asking them to. What they do, the function that they do serve extremely well is that they're the people who are on the street, in the restaurants, in the clubs, and in the retail establishments down here, developing the relationships that, quite frankly, the city of Tucson hasn't got the staff or the energy or the interest to do. It's the partnership who are out on the street, and they're the ones who are interacting with the small local businesses that keep this local economy going. So my position was very simple. We need to, while we are at a tipping point, positive tipping point economically in the downtown core, don't cut your marketing funding source. And that's the reason I said, no, I'm not going to support what I consider to be an underfunded budget.
And I think sometimes, in politics, you have to try to send a message, which is you might support a program, but it's not getting the level of resources that it needs. And sometimes you just got to say, we got to do more. But speaking as a downtown resident, I think the Downtown Tucson Partnership, which is also known as the Purple Shirts, at least on the streets, they do good work. And seeing some of the revitalization that's happening downtown, I would have to agree with Steve. That's something that we want to support. You don't want to. They've been responsible in many ways for helping bring about the revitalization of downtown that everybody's talking about. That's good for our economy and our quality of life, and we do need to support that.
You know, I owned. I guess you had a Long John Silver's.
Oh my gosh, 100 years ago. That was my first job out of college. Yeah.
I had an internet convenience store. It's even more hokey than that. It was $1 an hour. You can go in there and use a computer. Plus, it's a convenience store. We were doing that so we could skirt the it wasn't a cafe, so we didn't have to do that. Yeah, and there'd be a microwave and a sink and kind of thing. But I always heard promises from the Purple Shirts, and I never had anything come through.
Promises like what?
Promises like, oh, we'll help you get situated and we'll give you loans for what you need for, oh, come on, really? Do you want me to go
as
through
Daniel
this?
was correctly stating, the Purple Shirts are.
What can they really do?
They're a security
and
for.
where should it really? What can they do, and where should it end with them? Where should we expect them to be able to create what could possibly happen? Where
You're mixing two things.
Okay.
There are, quote, the Purple Shirts. That's the security.
Well, the downtown,
group.
right.
The Downtown Tucson Partnership is a broader agency.
I'm missing two things, but what I'm saying is, the Tucson Downtown Partnership,
Right.
Downtown Tucson Partnership, whatever it's called. What should we really expect?
Well, we have an enhanced service agreement with them that covers a variety of things. One I mentioned is clean. They do a lot of cleaning. They do graffiti abatement. They repaint the curbs. They empty the trash. They maintain the landscaping. That's one. They make sure
But
that
they don't support the businesses.
Well, that's absolutely false. They absolutely support the businesses. They're in the businesses all the time. They are advocating on behalf of the small local businesses that are in the downtown core. In fact, they're the only group in this community, including the Metro Chamber, who has a clue as to what's going on in the downtown core. I got into an absolute pissing contest with Mike Varney from the Chamber about some of the advocacy that they are not doing for the city of Tucson. He came out about a month ago and was throwing barbs at the city of Tucson for any number of things, one of which was our not advocating for Grand Canyon College well enough. And I said, Mike, of anybody in this community who ought to be cheerleading for the city and advocating businesses to come and establish themselves here, it ought to be you. The partnership is doing that, and they're the only ones who are doing it with respect to the downtown core that Daniel was talking about.
Absolutely. I know they're the only people that are doing it. I mean, there isn't.
No, that's why we ought to be funding them.
Yeah, well, but you voted against them.
I voted against underfunding them, yeah.
You voted against underfunding. Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. All right.
Well, Daniel's right. I mean, and he can speak from the state legislative level too. I'm sure there are votes that you took that you say, I'm sending a message to the majority that you're making, even though I support the program that we're voting on, you're cutting the legs out from them, and so I'm not going to support pulling the rug out from under somebody that needs the dollars.
That's right. And usually you explain that when you vote, and I think you did.
Yeah.
You explain, that this is something you really support. You'd like to see the level of support higher. You'd like to see that be supported by the city, and so you just can't support this proposal that the manager has in front of you. And sometimes you just got to make a stand. It doesn't mean you're against it. It just means you think it should even be stronger.
Right.
So sometimes you got to send that message in politics because we
No,
can always
I agree.
we can always do better.
If what is not there is the only thing that's there, then you say no to what isn't, I guess.
Well, I will tell you that the board, the Downtown Tucson Partnership Board, was appreciative of the no vote.
Oh, were they?
Oh, yeah. Because,
okay.
because they want somebody who has the integrity to stand up and tell the rest of the mayor and
on
council.
that meeting, it was interesting how there were a whole bunch of people. The last one that I was at, there were a whole bunch of people that were there right in the very beginning who did the public comment, and then as soon as that was done, they all just left.
Yeah,
And then the meeting went to like 10 or 9:30 or whatever. But one of the things that this guy Robert Clark, who was on my last show, he's with Safer Arizona and the patient advocacy group. He is looking at trying to make. Is there a way that the city council can say to the Tucson Police Department, hey, let's make just simple possession of marijuana, like not one of the things that you actually, if there's a rape in progress, let's focus on that. Can we make the drug paraphernalia, drug possession?
What they're
charge
asking us to do is
Yeah.
to direct the police departments to prioritize.
Is that to prioritize things in terms of more serious, more say hurtful, like in terms of someone harming someone else, crimes, right? Rather than someone not harming anyone.
No, I understand your question. I'm happy to answer it. if you'd
Is
like
there
me
is
to.
there a way that the city council can direct that?
Yeah,
TPD?
and I've had this conversation with Robert and with plenty of the people in that group. We are a legislative body. We are not an executive body.
Right.
We create ordinances and we turn the ordinances over to the executive to execute the law.
Right.
And I have said to them, and with the support of the city attorney, that we do not direct the executive branch, and so that whole separation of powers thing, how to carry out the
I
law.
know that you're the legislative branch and
Right.
you're not the executive branch.
And so
the
we don't
police
tell
are
the police,
executive,
and so we don't tell the
is
police
there
how
any
to.
way that you can give them that?
Yeah, we don't tell the police how to prioritize the job that they do. We can change the law, but this isn't even a local law. This is federal, and the state government right now is in litigation with the feds over this whole
Right.
issue. So
So do you think that Robert Clark is just blowing smoke then?
I think he's passionate about what he believes, but I think he's asking the wrong governing body to make that decision.
So he should ask.
It's a federal law. In fact, the state legislature is in litigation right now with the feds over this whole medical marijuana thing.
And
Yeah.
Steve makes a really good point. I mean, the city doesn't have the ability to go above and beyond state law. I mean, states will keep. I don't know if that's always good, but that's just the way it is. You have to live within
the
bounds of
Obama
law, just like
administration,
the
Eric
state.
Holder already said that they wouldn't interfere with
The state's got to exist within the feds, but I can provide a little broader commentary that on this particular issue, I think especially with decriminalization of cannabis or medical marijuana, I think this is an issue where a lot of people, most people are ahead of a lot of elected officials on this particular issue, I believe. And I think if you went around Tucson and talked to most of our police officers on the streets, they're out there to protect public safety, at least in my experience in my neighborhood. They're trying to protect people from violent crime, things that are actually going to threaten them. I don't get the impression that for a lot of officers in Tucson, they're sneaking around looking for somebody smoking a joint or something. You know, they might find some during a search, during another thing, but the change has to come through voters. The change is going to come just like it came on medical marijuana in Arizona. It's going to come through people saying, this is what we want. We want this change to be considered. And I think it's something that is happening. In fact, interestingly, this week, Senator McCain, who just had a town hall meeting on the south side of Tucson, which I salute him for actually coming down and having a real meeting, in Tucson. Even Senator McCain, a real strong conservative, was saying this is a conversation about the broader war on drugs that we need to have at a national level. So I think this is something that's starting to gain, because it's expensive. If you take a look at the cost benefit of pursuing it, there's some real questions. So I think it's a conversation on a policy level that we'll continue to have, and we do need to see more progress at the U.S. Congress and the state legislative level to follow the will of, I think, most citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have something that pretty much a lot of people just do, right? And already, like, say, smoke pot. All right, let's just say that, or any other sort of vice, as it were. We already tax this. We tax cigarettes, we tax alcohol, we tax, whatever else we tax. And as long as you're not, say, operating heavy machinery, why do you suppose that there's this large headwind against, just this one extra? I mean, what do you really think about that? I mean,
You want to take it?
is it? Yeah.
Well,
I'm fine.
look, there's all kinds of reasons for that.
I mean, are we going back to the Mexicans
It's
here?
historic,
I mean,
but again, I think there's shifts happening. But it's something that people are going to have to pursue through the political process in the state of Arizona. Given the current political makeup, it's going to be
Okay.
through probably through the referral.
So
people getting signatures,
you'd
putting
go,
this on the
you'd
ballot.
go and say that we should have
Let the voters decide.
We should have a legalization referendum.
Well, the state constitution,
initiative.
if citizens feel like the legislature is not being responsive to what people
are
want,
able to, yes.
Arizona actually has a fairly progressive constitution, which
Yes.
allows
Yeah, I
citizens
know, yeah.
to take to the streets, get signatures, and let the voters decide on this issue.
Right.
That's what a democracy is about. And luckily, we have a state where if we feel like legislators
that's
aren't doing the
kind
job,
of where
we can
I'm
put
getting
this on
at
the ballot.
because
and it'll probably be on the ballot next year, is what
Because Steve,
people are working
yeah,
towards.
apparently on the last show that was what that we were talking about.
But
And if
voters
not,
will have to
medical
decide.
marijuana, marijuana policy project. Rob Campia is going to put it on in 2016. So.
Yeah, my point is voters will have to decide.
Well, here's the thing. What Steve was saying is he's saying that the branch of the legislature, the ones who make the laws, aren't the ones to be the, and I understand the difference between the legislature and the executive branch and the judicial branch and yeah, okay. But the point is that it is the legislature who does make those laws, and if you say that, hey, look, we're going to make this so it isn't like that, it is up to the legislature to tell the executive to not enforce it in the way that they're enforcing it. And so I mean, it seems like it took a bit of a cop out there, and I'm just.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
First of all,
no pun intended, I suppose.
there is good shot. There are three different things going on here. First of all, I don't agree with your characterization that there's a big headwind against this. I agree with Daniel that the majority of the people probably are either agnostic or ambivalent about whether or not they think pot should be decriminalized. I think most people would say fine.
Well, now, yes.
Yeah,
now it's
but
like
we're talking about now.
56%
We're not talking about back
nationally,
in 1960. So,
Yeah, okay,
so I think
okay,
that the majority of the people would say, you know what, it's probably a pretty benign drug used socially. Most of the people who are in my age group used it back in the 60s and 70s, and so we know that you're not going to go diving off of buildings and start having hallucinations. We know better than that.
That would be acid.
So I get it. So that's one thing. The second thing, though, is that a legislative body does not tell the executive how to prioritize the laws that they passed. The Tucson. Wait a minute. Let me finish the sentence.
Go.
The Tucson Police Department is required to enforce the laws that they are given. For the legislative body to come in and say, we want you to create a pecking order, would be just an inappropriate act of the legislature. That's not even the key, though. The key here is we've got the federal government right now who's in litigation against the state over our medical marijuana deal. Now the groups that's trying to draw us in the middle of this, let's let that piece of litigation sort itself out. I mean, I'll give you an example. We just, we, the city of Tucson, passed some zoning regulations that allowed for dispensaries to pop up
Yeah,
around town.
yeah.
The state legislature is still the entity that gives the permits. And so what we did is we established some zoning regs, and you have to be within 1,000 feet from a school or a daycare center, those kinds of things. So we look at, for instance, there's a dispensary that just opened up on next to the district on 6.
Yeah.
At the time they opened up, there was a church that was inactive
Yeah.
within 1,000 feet of it.
Yeah.
We went out and we said, is the church active? Is it operating? The answer was no. So we said to the state, that from a zoning standpoint, it's
boarded up,
appropriate.
too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It's from a zoning standpoint, it's appropriate. The state issues the permit, not the city. So now we're getting pulled into this issue where somebody went and started using the church after the permit was issued, and the argument is, well, you don't apply a law retroactively. So
Right.
you've got a federal law, you've got the litigation with the state's issuing permits, we're called into a zoning issue, and what I'm trying to articulate is that it's not as simple as Robert and these guys would want us to believe, that the city council should tell the Tucson Police Department how to apply the laws that they've been given. There's a whole lot more complex than that. I think
But
underlying.
the police don't enforce zoning laws.
No, we're talking about the pot laws.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about is a whole lot more complex issue than simply saying give them a directive.
Yeah.
It would be inappropriate for us to do that, in my opinion.
How
It would be like the
how
state
does it
legislature.
happen that how does it happen?
It would be
that
like
other-
the state legislature having gone in and told the state attorney general how to apply certain state laws. He would blow back at them and sue them in a heartbeat.
Okay, it's only that there are places like Oakland, California, and numerous cities around the entire country that have already done this as a directive. Maybe it's by the city manager I don't know how it works.
City managers are part of the executive branch.
Okay.
So if he wants to make an
So
if he
you
wants
guys
to make
can
an
tell the
administrative
city manager,
No.
which is executive, to tell the police, which are executive, right?
Yeah, you're going down a black hole on this thing
All
because
right,
it's
all
not
right, all
going to
right.
happen.
I'm going to drop it. All right. Enough of that.
If you wish, but it's not.
I swear there's a way to do this, and I know there are other towns in this country that have done this.
I think the more
and
rational.
I'm just wondering whether or not we
Yeah.
could do this.
I think the more rational way to do it is what Daniel was suggesting, and that is to change the law through the,
Well,
through
yeah,
the referendum.
I totally
but
agree.
that's not a
All right,
local.
all right,
That's not a local call.
Let's move on to something more important. Plan Tucson. That's something that's on it's on the mind of all the city council. It's not really on the ballot per se.
Yes, it is.
Is it going to be which
Yeah.
ballot initiative is it?
I don't know the number, but it's on this fall's ballot.
Because there's home rule, which is 401, and then there's 201, which is the and I totally want to talk about both of these because we're good on time, and what they plan to do with the pensions. If this
That
if
may or may not
201
make it to the
passes,
ballot. Yeah, that may or may not.
I don't think that's a very good idea to put. It's basically putting all the pension money into putting it into a fund which is based on the whims of the market as opposed to a more stable currency. And then not only that, but then you have this is what's paying off all the old pensions, and then new ones are bought. I'm sure you have something to say about.
Do you want me to talk about Plan Tucson, the home rule, or the pensions?
Let's talk about the pensions first.
All right.
Because that's the most disconcerting.
Okay.
That I can see.
It is undeniable that first of all, there are two different pensions going on. One, the state legislature controlled, and that's the public safety.
No,
pension.
those Tucson city pensions.
And,
Yeah,
right. But the Tucson's public safety
Which
employees
is
are
what
city
which is
employees.
what this law would this is what the
And so
proposition
what
would
they're
affect.
what they're
Yeah.
proposing to do is to pull all new employees out of the current pension system and put them into what you were describing, the analog of a 401k.
Right.
The problem with that is that you can't establish a one-size-fits-all solution to, quote, pension problems, because no two pensions are alike. We happen to have a very old pension. There are some pensions up in the East Valley that are pretty new, and the distinction is this. An old pension has a lot of retirees, and there's a lot of people taken, and they've got fewer and fewer employees who are actually paying in. It's the analog to Social Security, where all we baby boomers are out there taking the Social Security now, and you got fewer and fewer people paying into it. My assessment of the pension proposal that's on the ballot, if it gets there, because it's being challenged in court also right now.
Yes, and
So,
that, because they're felons who went and
perhaps,
signature, who knows?
Perhaps.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
my assessment is that it would crash the system. You would have
Right.
you would force the general fund to fund the existing obligations
Right.
that we have, and so I think that you don't kill the patient to cure the disease. We can do things like address spiking of pensions. We can talk about changing the way that we assess our investment portfolio, those kinds of things. At some point, though, it's going to be a little bit self-correcting, too, and quite frankly, to be a little bit macabre about it, all those people who are retired right now, some of them are going to die, and our obligations are going to get fewer and fewer, and as we hire more employees...
Let's do this. Let's just kill all the pensions, and then everyone will have no money, and then they'll all die, and then there won't be any need for the pensions. That's self-correcting, isn't it?
Well,
The situation with pensions is complicated. I mean, you need financial managers to really take a look at all the details in pensions, and it's important to remember that we've made promises to people that have worked hard to serve in government. They've worked hard in some ways. Some of them have been paid less than maybe they otherwise would have made through the private sector. So I believe it's important to honor the commitments that have been made. But at the same time, cities all over the country are struggling in many ways with pensions, especially as they move into the future. And so you have to be careful from a fiscal standpoint to make sure that you're not getting into a financially unsustainable situation with pensions. And so it's possible that, although I believe it's critical to honor the promises that have been made, the way pensions are done in the future, moving forward, it's always got to be able to pay for itself so that you're not creating a giant burden for taxpayers or eventually crashing the system. And this stuff it's complicated. But it's important to honor the people that you've made promises to.
Yeah, and we need to make sure that we have enough money to pay for the obligations that we have already, said that we have. And one of the ways that I think maybe that might help with all this is if we institute if we allow ourselves to actually use the money that we have, home rule. If that would be 401, is that correct?
all right.
Proposition 401 on the ballot. Couldn't we apply that extra money toward things like this?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, Daniel and I were talking about the whole home rule and the 10th Amendment hypocrisy that comes out of the state legislature all the time. The home rule that you're describing is really pretty simple, and that is there was a formula that was established, I think it was in 1990 or something like that, and when
I thought it was 80 actually.
Then 80, whatever
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
but we've been locked into that by the state legislature.
Well, it's important because 80 was
Well,
much different from.
Then
than
fine, and then it was 80.
Right.
Then so the formula.
Long time ago.
Yeah,
It
a long
was-
time ago.
Yeah.
The formula-
I was 8. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
The formula says that you can't spend more than whatever that baseline rate was plus inflation and population. At the last census, our population in Tucson, Pima County went down, so that decreased the spending we can have.
Right.
We're
And
seeing
we've been held at that level.
Right. We are seeing a ton of economic development go on in the downtown core right now. What home rule, if it failed, would say is that even though you've generated enough, you've grown the
Doesn't
economic
matter. You
pie,
can't use it. It's not yours.
put it off on the table and
Right.
spend it next year.
That's right.
So yeah, I think the voters really need to understand what it means.
Yeah.
It's
and,
not
and if we approve it, then it's, oh my God, we can use that to keep bettering.
Right.
And then it would become exponential in the way that, well, you'd use that to keep bettering, and then
it's not new taxes. It's not new tax. It's using the tax money that you're already generating.
It's unused money that we are not allowed to use based on a 1980 rule.
Right.
Right. because why are we even thinking about 1980? Why don't we?
Well,
go to-
again,
yeah.
this is, we
Right,
locally,
no, and
we
the
can't
voters,
change
the
state
voters
law.
have to go ahead.
Sorry, quickly
and-
pointing at you
Well,
as being the
go ahead.
state.
Go ahead.
Steve makes a great point, and this is something that I saw repeatedly from my colleagues when I served in the state legislature was attempts to constantly micromanage and keep local government under the thumb, under the heavy hand of state government. And
Right.
this would come from friends of mine at the Capitol who would paint themselves as small government conservatives. And there's nothing small government about having the heavy hand of the state come in and smack around cities and counties, and that's what happens. And it's a problem. It's we need general guidance at a state level. The same thing from the U.S. Congress to the states. You need a general guidance, but the people want, and democracy, I think, functions best at the level that's closest to the people. And so we need to be willing to empower, I think, local elected leaders to make tough decisions about how to spend tax money in their communities. I think they're usually going to make better decisions at a local level than you're going to see from a distance. And if people don't like the decisions they make, that's what elections are for. You run somebody else in there to make decisions. But it's a real problem in this state of having heavy-handed people in the majority at the state capitol, really making it difficult. And I certainly sympathize with the difficulties that city councils have, counties have problems. And finally, certainly, my constituents, when I represented people at the state level, we need to get our money back. At the Tucson level, at the Pima County level, and even at the state and federal level, we're donors. We're basically paying more money into the system than we're able to get back and use. And that's also not consistent with my principles of fiscal responsibility or small government, that money just goes elsewhere. It'll go to other programs, it'll go to other communities, and at a federal level, it'll go to other states. And I'm not in favor of high taxes. I never really have been. I think we need to keep the tax burden low, but whatever money people are paying in taxes needs to come back to the community and be usable on a timely basis within the community as soon as possible. And we don't need politicians in Phoenix and Washington trying to micromanage local affairs. That's a damaging trend in politics that really needs to stop.
Let me give you two.
Sell me on Plan Tucson.
Well, first of all, let me give you two examples
Yeah,
as
go
to what
ahead.
Daniel was
Yeah.
talking about. We just won a court case on how we conduct our elections. The decision came out just last week. It's the second time we've had to go into litigation because somebody from the state legislature tried to tell Charter City how to conduct our elections. Last time it was Jonathan Payton's, we're going to do ward only and nonpartisan elections. We fought him on that. The court was very clear, saying that the city charter is their constitution. It trumps state legislature. We just did it again this time when the legislature was trying to make us go to all even-numbered years elections. That's
well,
the
that's still in the courts, I guess.
No, we just won.
Well, we won, but they can appeal.
Well, they can appeal, yeah,
Yeah.
but I
They'll
would,
lose. I mean,
I
that
don't
was
see
a
it
clear
winning.
case.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'd
Okay,
like to
sorry,
see the legal bills.
Go on. Yeah.
The legal bills on that are it's a big waste.
And that's the other thing about just complete government waste. I mean, there was a great example. Okay, go on.
The other example is the whole gun control thing.
Yeah.
This was 2 years ago. The state legislature adopted a bill. It was called Senate Bill 133108, and basically it preempted local jurisdictions from adopting gun regulations that are more restrictive than state law. The problem that I've got with that, and something that Daniel was speaking about, is that the elected officials who are closest to their constituents are the ones who are hearing those voices most directly.
Sure.
And so the argument that I had was that if we are preempted at the time by Russell Pierce up in Mesa from adopting a ban on guns in city parks. If Russell Pierce...
was it Anzanori who had the... Who was it? The
sponsor of that?
The free guns.
Oh, that's
and
Frank
then
Antonori, yeah.
Was that Anzanori?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the critters bill.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
My argument was that if Russell Pierce is hearing from his constituents up in Mesa before he was recalled, thank God,
Yeah.
that they want guns in public parks, then fine. Then they can adopt something up in Mesa that reflects the will of their constituents. That's not what I'm hearing from the people in Tucson. And so to the point of preemption, state preempting, or one step removed, feds preempting the state.
And this is why I support this man for his re-election. right there.
Oh, good.
Because
I'll
he
take that.
listens to what people. Yeah, seriously.
So you asked about
I mean,
Plan
that's what
Tucson.
it is.
All right. Well, you
Yeah,
asked
sell
about
me
Plan
on Plan
Tucson.
Tucson. Seriously.
I think it's. I
mean, I'm kind of already. I see. There's a bunch of things that I'd maybe talk about, like more greening, but we have that conversation on the in the last. It was brought up that maybe there is a better way to support the community in terms of maybe putting that money toward somehow getting jobs, somehow getting not just making sidewalks on the sides of roads that should have had sidewalks 30 years ago, but
right.
yeah.
And so you brought up the pensions,
yeah.
and you brought up the home rule, and now you're bringing up Plan Tucson. And
Yeah.
every one of them is an example of the state legislature mandating that we do something locally.
Yeah, that's
The
true.
only reason we're doing
Yes.
this Plan Tucson is because the state mandates that we do it once every 10 years.
There it is. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's
No,
gonna,
that's true.
it'll be
That's why we.
for most
that's
people, it'll
why.
be a coffee table book.
Right.
It'll never
Right.
get opened.
Right. That's why we should support the whole plan.
Well, we have to. We have to do it because the state mandates we do it.
The
And
state
if-
will otherwise
if-
make us looking like Las Vegas or
Well,
something.
if the voters vote this down, we will still have to go and take it back to them again, yet again next year. And it's just
Okay.
a waste of staff's time.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of, and this was again, I'm going with what was brought up in the last. There was this guy who said that because no one else is running, we shouldn't hold an election because it would save money. Write-ins. Hold on. What?
Actually,
Really?
there are no contested primaries.
That's right.
And,
Yeah, there are none.
and
Yeah.
so
Well, you're gonna sail in there. I mean,
well, they can still
Yeah.
write someone in.
well,
I,
I'm gonna run.
okay.
I am in. I do live in your district.
All right, well, more power to you.
Beware.
Have at it. We'll be on a forum together then. Do your
You'll be right here.
do your homework. The
I'll
guy's
worry
name
about
who
that
raised that issue actually does access shows. His name is Robert Royce. I actually beat him to the punch on that because when I saw that there were no contested primaries, I contacted the city clerk and said, can't we just skip this, not waste the money on going, it's required by charter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It would be unconstitutional if we would.
Yeah, it's required
Yeah,
by
the way a
charter.
nomination
we
gets made.
can't-
That's right.
You
Yeah.
can't not do it.
I mean, it would make sense. It does make
I
sense
mean,
because
yeah, I mean-
I can give you my
Oh,
example.
that's
I got my mail-in
That's the end
ballot.
of democracy right there. I swear
I
to
got my
God,
mail-in
that would
ballot
be the
a couple
end.
days
Oh my
ago.
God. No, no. Oh, by the way, because we don't see that there are other people running. Oh, no.
but in
that's
our-
it.
in our current
look
political
what's going on
structure-
with 2305 or whatever the hell.
For better
you
or for
know,
worse,
right?
in the
Yeah.
current political structure,
Yeah, yeah.
that's how parties nominate their candidates.
But is
it's
it
just the way
weird
is.
that there's no one running? That's kind of the question that I had. I mean, granted, yes, there's no one running, but isn't that a little? I mean, why, shouldn't you be contested or something? I mean,
Everybody in the
at
community
least
has
by
an
a
opportunity
Green
to
Party
file.
member. I mean, where's Mary DeCamp when you need her?
The
I
Green
mean,
Party,
come on,
the
what's
Green
going on?
Party didn't get enough votes in the last election to qualify as a candidate, so they're
Yeah,
out.
and
So they're out
that's,
collecting.
oh my God, you wanted to bring up 2305. Okay, we're doing it.
Well,
All right.
I guess I want to touch on the importance of primaries. I mean, I actually would be thrilled if there were some contested primaries at all levels. I mean, I think that voters are generally better served when there's competition in politics, just like
Yeah.
competition in economics, competition in
I know,
politics.
I know.
But you can't force people to run. You can't force them to run, and that doesn't mean that I think people should run because I think Steve or anybody else is doing a bad job. I just think it tends
No,
to keep it keeps people on their toes when they've got somebody running against them.
And it
they've
keeps
gotta
shows
run for
like
them.
this more
But-
interesting.
But look,
Because look what we got. We got him, right?
I guess I just
John Kromko's not even here.
I
Come on,
wanna
really? All right.
But I'd like to make a plea that people can run for office. You can do it. It's not something that if you've got some good
I
ideas
didn't mean that.
and you're willing to do a little bit of work and
not
talk to your
being
neighbors and go out there, you can do it. So the idea that you just got to leave it up to somebody else, in a representative democracy like we have, you can certainly do that. But you can also run. And unfortunately, I hear a lot of complaining about decisions that are being made. If people want to complain, that's fine. It's a free country. Everybody can complain, but run for office. I mean, that's the best way to do it.
Well-
and we do have contested races in the general election,
Yeah, yeah.
where some of those issues will.
Well, that's what's happening
will come
on,
out.
and obviously you and who knows if Kromka is showing up. But obviously, you're invited on the 18th of October.
But you brought up
obviously you're
you brought up
going.
House Bill
You're not-
2305.
You don't even have to worry. You're a shoo-in. But you might as well show up.
But you brought up House Bill 2305, and
Let's see
I
if
do
Richard
want to
Fimbres does.
I do want to touch on that because that's another bill that came out of the state legislature.
That's what keeps the Greens and well, basically,
They will never be on a ballot again if that passes.
The numbers for the Republicans, the minimum criteria to get onto a ballot for the Republicans in Arizona, it goes down. For everyone else, it goes up. For
Well, I think
everyone but
Daniel's-
the
the
Democrats
point he's gonna make is
and Libertarians, it goes up more than the amount of people who exist
correct.
even in your party
it's
that
unfair.
you could possibly have.
It's something that people are working
And not
to
only that,
overturn
and I want to
through a
say one more
referendum
other thing
process.
about this because I really like to rant about this crap. Since you decided to bring it up, I guess I decided to bring it up. Is that they did this in Arizona a week before the ruling on the Supreme Court ruled on 4B. Of
House Bill
the-
2305. It was
Yeah.
signed
That
into law by the
happened
governor
a week
before the
prior,
ruling came out on
before the
on
ruling
voting
from
rights.
yes.
Well, but the
So when
issue
everyone
I have-
says Texas went ahead and did it right, dude, we beat y'all by a week.
But my point is America.
It's nothing to be proud of.
Our freedom in America is really endangered if we make it harder for people to vote, if we disempower people through the elective process. And this is something, in fact, in recent days, the state of North Carolina has been getting quite a bit of attention due to a new bill they passed there that people are arguing is going to make it harder to vote. The situation in Arizona is arguably worse because our underlying state law was already harder. And I just have a question to anybody in office that fears voters. What, you should never.
I think that
you should
people
never
would
fear
a
people
voter
voting.
if it goes against
We
the
should all
way
be
that
trying
you're
to make it easier for people to vote as long as it's legal, as long as it's legitimate. But unfortunately, there's a trend nationwide in certain states, and Arizona is certainly one of them, of generally making it harder for people to vote. And to me, that's just
okay.
it's
Let
just
me
un-American. I
approach
don't know how
it
else
from
to
what
put it.
I perceive as their view. If you're a king, meaning the head of a corporation, because there are no more kings, they're now heads of corporations. If you're the head of a corporation, you're making a bank load off of mining, let's say, or whatever the hell you're making money off of, or call centers or whatever, and you have the opportunity to let your slaves get power over you. Would you want that, or would you want them to not have power? Well, you'd certainly shut that shit down.
Well, I don't
And
care what they want.
I really
this
think
is-
that's what's
it's a
going
free
on.
country. I don't care what they want.
Well, it's not that free that people who are the corporate kings can go in and tell and buy votes and buy elections by simply spending too much money. Corporations are not people, obviously. Show me a grave.
The 2305, I'm not sure I understand the analogy, but 2305 is going to make it absolutely impossible for third parties to even appear on the ballot
Yeah, I know.
because of the numbers of
But it has
signatures
to
that
be.
they're going
It
to
has
be
to be.
required.
And
to vote.
there's an initiative to get it. I know what we are. I'm looking at it. Okay, so we're like, okay, city pensions, 201. That's a no, right?
If that's the pension number, yeah, it'll crash the system.
401 is yes.
Which one is
Home
that?
rule.
Oh, absolutely. yeah.
Home rule. Okay. All right.
And
Okay, we have not. And you were the champion of how to properly widen Broadway.
Oh, God. And we got 4 minutes.
Quick. Yeah, we got 3 actually.
I'll give you the Reader's Digest version
Yeah,
real
yeah.
quickly. Is that in 2006 the voters passed the RTA bill, and it Broadway was to require widening Broadway to 150-foot cross width all to the north.
Yeah.
It was based on traffic studies that were
I
25.
used to live in 1703 and in 1647.
You gave me 3 minutes. You better shut
Oh,
up.
I know.
All right.
Yeah, it's going to be a mess. They have to destroy
They will
church,
knock down
move
115
buildings.
to
Yeah, it's
120
awful.
businesses that are the
Couldn't we
tax
just
base.
fit it in between?
Well, probably not exactly, but certainly not have to go to 150 feet.
I took what do you call it? The Google Maps and I took a screen ruler and I moved the screen across with the screen ruler, and I was able to fit it, including sidewalks and whatever.
150 feet?
I used the width that was right when you cross Country Club.
Yeah.
And that width that's right there in
Yeah,
the first block of that.
Yeah, that's like
That's the width that I used.
Okay.
And I had to destroy 6 buildings to get through the whole
Right. Well, if you used 150 feet.
Six.
Right. If you
Six.
used 150 feet, you'd knock down 115 to 120 buildings.
Yeah, that's just insane.
I want to make a quick comment on Broadway
Great.
because I think there's been some important flexibility, and I'm more optimistic with leadership change at RTA
I
that
am
there's going
too.
to be more
Yep.
flexible approach. No disrespect to Gary Hayes, but
All
the
right.
guy was kind of hard nosed. My point is, for those of us on the south side, we want to see progress on Broadway because there's also a looming issue on 22nd Street. Similar issues for neighborhoods and parks. And I think if Broadway can go forward in a way that's sustainable, that protects quality of life, we can do the same thing on 22nd. Because I can tell you, neighbors a little bit to the south are also worried about a huge plan on 22nd, which would be very damaging.
The Broadway conversation can serve as a template for some of the other major corridor projects going forward.
The other thing on there's all this crap about the cell phone towers. Why don't we just put them up on top of the electric lines, the big TEP lines? Like, stick an extra little pole up there and make them really high.
TEP owns the lines,
Paint
and they
them-
probably don't
paint
want
them
them up
blue
there.
or whatever, you know. Well, yeah, but I'm sure we can come to an agreement there.
So I have a study session agenda item coming in October to talk about that. What we have,
Yes.
what we have done though.
And that's why I was asking when is the next council meeting, but that's
This one's
actually
in
in
October.
October, not in September.
What we have done, though, is we've watched the technology outpace the law in this case. And I will guarantee you that everybody in the audience who was cheering the fact that we voted down the AT&T cell tower was probably tweeting and Facebooking and using all of the electronics that are driving the market demand for more cell towers to brag about it to the residents. We need to fix that. The cell companies are required by federal law to do certain things. Our local ordinance has to respect that also.
But can't we just
We can
do
talk
that?
about.
Can't we? I mean,
well,
wouldn't that be the ultimate solution? You know, here's the thing: is I was going to try to talk about NIMBYism a lot tonight, and I didn't even get a chance.
I would.
But,
I guess
but
I would
the
argue
same
that.
people that were saying that they don't want the cell phone
Yeah.
towers in parks because of lightning strikes want them in Reed Park.
I guess I
And
would argue
I don't
that
get that.
everybody,
I mean-
everybody who is a property owner would fall under your umbrella of what you call the NIMBY. I want to protect my private property rights. The challenge with land use decisions is how do you do responsible development that respects property rights and the needs of businesses, and that's a challenge.
Okay, well that's true, and that's why I'm saying, like in the case of in both locations, there are very large TEP towers that are already there that are taller than the proposed tower would have been in the first place,
Yeah.
which is weird because no one mentioned that.
Well, we're going to get our arms around it.
And then just use that one.
No, we can't compel, and Daniel, I'm sure, knows more about
I don't know
this
if
You
than
it's
me.
can't
compatible
compel
with the lines.
TEP
Exactly.
to
I
I mean, it's
do
a good concept,
anything,
but
but
Yeah.
what does it take?
I don't
What do
know
you
if
have to
it's
do?
com- I don't know
Okay,
if the
all
signals are
right.
compatible
Let's drop that.
And the
Maybe.
corporation commission will.
I mean,
Oh,
it's
hold
just like
on,
putting
hold on.
a
I got a
passenger
really
train
good
on
one.
the Union Pacific
Why
right away.
is there
It's a good
supposed
idea,
to
but
be
they
a
don't want it.
hotel right downtown? And that's 20 seconds because we got to go quick. Why should there be a hotel right at 5th and Congress?
It's being funded by private sector development.
If
so
it's
I'm
not sustained, it's being funded by taxpayers. Why?
No, it's not.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there.
Okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, but you're talking about some state statutorily appropriate incentives.
Looking at this.
If somebody needs some incentives to generate the loans that they need to get up and go vertical, then that's fine. It has to pass a state constitutional gift clause.
Okay, well, just so that it's still obviously it needs to be sustainable beyond that.
Right,
All right.
and the gift clause simply
And I
says.
stop moving. All right,
done?
we're done. We're done. That's the end.